Good, happy Tuesday evening. I'm Riley King, and welcome to this Tuesday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast, right here on the Riley King Network. We have a lot of news to get to this Tuesday evening, so let's begin. First up, Dr. Anthony Fauci discussed confusion over CDC's new mask guidance. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
It's finally here. Shop Kohl's lowest prices of the season for tees starting at just $5.99, swimwear starting at $17.99, and get Shark vacuums for $199.99. Even better, get Kohl's Cash and get it all in 1 hour or less with free store pickup. Kohl's.
Let's bring in Dr. Anthony Fauci, President Biden's chief medical advisor. Dr. Fauci, thanks for joining us again this morning. Let's pick up where Stephanie just left off. What's your message to parents this morning whose kids are unvaccinated?
Well, the same as Stephanie just mentioned, and that is that the CDC recommendations still maintain that for children who are not vaccinated, obviously, most children are not, 12 to 15 are getting vaccinated, that indoors they should still wear masks. And that's the CDC recommendation. Will that change as we get more and more information, as we get more and more people vaccinated? Certainly, we have to keep up with the evolving situation. George, we're not going to have kids at that age vaccinated for at least several months as we get towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year.
Okay, let's talk about the lifting of the mask mandates that we're seeing in many states, like here in New York. Other states are not ready to do that. Is the CDC basically saying whichever choice the state makes is fine?
Well, not really, George. If you look at it, the science that evolved over the last few weeks that prompted the CDC to make the recommendations that people who are vaccinated should feel safe and be able to go indoors and outdoors without wearing a mask relates to the evidence of how effective these vaccines are, not only in protecting you against infection, but even if you have a breakthrough infection, the chances of your transmitting it to someone else is extremely low, very, very low. The problem in the issue is that we don't have any way of knowing who is vaccinated and who's not vaccinated. And I think that's where the confusion arises, because there are some establishments who are saying, well, I'm going to have people coming into my establishment, my store, or what have you. Some are going to be vaccinated and some are not. I'm not going to know the difference. Some might be infected and might actually have a risk of infecting someone else. And under those circumstances, it's perfectly reasonable and understandable for the owner of that establishment to say, you know, we're going to keep the mask mandate up. And that's what we're seeing. And I think that's causing the confusion because some are maintaining a mask mandate and others are not.
How has it changed what you do when you wear a mask?
Excuse me,
how has it changed what you do? How has it changed your mask wearing practices?
Well, you know, George, I'm obviously careful because, I'm a physician and a healthcare provider. I am now much more comfortable in people seeing me indoors without a mask. Before the CDC made the recommendation change, I didn't want to look like I was giving mixed signals. But being a fully vaccinated person, the chances of my getting infected in an indoor setting is extremely low. And that's the reason why in indoor settings now, I feel comfortable about not wearing a mask because I'm fully vaccinated.
Finally, I know that President Biden announced that 20 million vaccines are going to be going overseas right now. A lot of health experts saying it's not nearly enough. We really need to ramp up production all around the world.
True. And we should do that. Right now we're taking a step forward. We're going to have a total of 80 million be giving out, 60 of the AZ, and 20 million of a combination of Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J. But that's just going to be the beginning, George. I've always said, and I'll maintain it, right now with you here today that I feel that as a rich country, we really do have a moral obligation to play a major role in making sure that there are vaccines to those countries that can't afford to get the vaccines themselves.
Dr. Fauci, thanks for your time and information, as always.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for...
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Israel vows to continue offensive in Gaza. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Darlings, do you want to know the secret to my supermodel brow?
Now to the escalating crisis in the Middle East. Calls for ceasefire between Israel and Hamas growing, but no sign yet of an end to the violence as the Israeli Prime Minister vows to, quote, to take whatever action necessary. Matt Gutman is on the ground in Israel. Matt?
This is the first time ever that all Palestinians living in the West Bank, Gaza, and Israel proper here have waged this general strike. You can see all the stores shuttered here, but there's still a pretty significant security presence here. Now, the Palestinians claim that there is a growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and officials tell us that on the ground they are running out of water. The sewage has been disrupted. There's almost no power left, and they're running out of blood. This on the 9th day of the conflict here.
Overnight, those massive blasts in Gaza City shattering the night for the 8th straight night. Israel releasing this video of a ferocious aerial assault, saying it was targeting Hamas tunnels in the Gaza Strip. And this morning, an unprecedented call for roughly 7 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and within Israel proper to join a general strike. Those strikers protesting the violence now in its second week, and despite mounting international pressure, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying the offensive will continue. But Gaza's infrastructure crippled. Its electric company saying the 140-mile square strip is in danger of running out of power within days. Local health authorities reporting they will run out of blood in 24 hours. As ambulances ferry new patients in, the wounded spilling out of Gaza's overwhelmed hospitals. And the dead, 61 of them children, mourned by anguished parents. Airstrikes taking chunks out of the Palestinian Ministry of Health building and a medical clinic nearby. Ambulances taking some of the wounded into Egypt for care. Meanwhile, Israel has staged ground forces just outside the Gaza Strip.
This is an Israeli military staging ground. You can see how they've dug in these armored personnel carriers just over there. Another row of personnel carriers, and beyond this berm, battle tanks.
Officials reporting more than 210 Palestinians have been killed, more than 1,400 wounded. And on the Israeli side, 10 killed and 300 wounded after more than 3,300 rockets were fired towards Israel by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, but about 90% of them intercepted and disabled by Israel's Iron Dome.
Now, overnight, for the first time, we had 6 hours uninterrupted with no rockets landing in Israel. The Palestinians saying for the first time that nobody was killed in Gaza. That as the Biden administration continues to push with increasing urgency for a ceasefire here.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. FAA proposes large fines for unruly passengers. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Introducing Michelob Ultra Organic Seltzer. It has 0 grams of sugar and is USD.
Now to that new crackdown by the FAA proposing large fines for unruly airline passengers. This as people return to the skies in record numbers since the beginning of the pandemic, with more than 1.8 million people checking in this past Sunday. Transportation correspondent Gio Benitez, he's all over this for us and has more. Good morning, Gio.
Hey, Robin, good morning to you. Yeah, overnight we spoke with the head of the FAA, and he says he's seeing a dramatic increase in these cabin confrontations and that these fines are among the strongest actions they've ever taken. This morning, from the friendly skies to the unruly ones, passengers facing big fines over in-flight fights. Now this week, the FAA proposing its biggest fine yet this year, more than $52,000 for a passenger who officials say tried to open the cockpit door on a Delta flight from Honolulu to Seattle before allegedly striking a flight attendant in the face. FAA Administrator Steve Dixon telling us overnight it's unacceptable. Are you seeing a dramatic increase in passengers who are just behaving erratically?
Yes. In my experience as a commercial airline captain for more than 27 years, unruly passenger incidents themselves are nothing new. But as I said, we have seen an alarming increase in the rate over the last few months, and it's something that we need to get under control.
A similar incident was caught on tape in October.
Oh, Lord.
Two passengers were traveling together from Miami to Atlanta. One of them allegedly refused to wear a mask. The flight returned to the gate, and they were asked to get off the plane when this happened. The passenger hitting the flight attendant in the face. The FAA proposing a fine of more than $27,000.
These fines are among the strongest that we have ever taken in the agency. We don't do these zero tolerance programs very often.
This all comes as the FAA is reporting more than 1,300 incidents of unruly passengers since February. And a large number of those incidents are actually people who just refuse to wear a mask on a plane. So you got to remember, even with the CDC recommendations, it is still federal law to wear a mask on all forms of public transportation. And of course, that includes airplanes.
Everyone needs to keep that in mind. And Gia, while we have you here, so many people, so many more are taking to the skies again. Ticket prices are rising too. Is there any way to avoid those spiking prices and get a good deal?
Absolutely. So we spoke to our friends over at scottscheapflights.com, and here's what they say. They say that you want to book in that sweet spot, not too early, not too late. For domestic flights, that means 1 to 3 months out. For international flights, that means 2 to 8 months in advance of the flight. So that's where you're going to find the best prices, but also you got to be flexible. So if you can be a little bit flexible on your timeline, you're going to get the best deal, Rob.
I love how you started off by rubbing your hands together. Like, oh, I have a deal for you. Yes, find that sweet spot.
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Thank you, Gia.
He's loving his beat.
He is. He really.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Supreme Court to hear major abortion right case. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
Now to the Supreme Court. The new conservative majority set to hear a major case on abortion rights that is a direct challenge to Roe versus Wade. Terry Moran, who follows the court for us, has the very latest this morning. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Michael. This is a big one. It's the most important challenge to abortion rights at this court in decades, and that's because this case takes direct aim at one of the central issues in Roe versus Wade. Can states ban abortions before a fetus is able to survive outside the mother's womb, before it's viable in the language of the law? Mississippi passed a law that would ban almost all abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. That's well before viability. And in the past, the justices have struck down similar laws, but those were different justices. President Trump transformed this court, shifting it rightward, naming 3 staunch conservatives, including Justice Amy Coney Barrett, to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Before she joined the court, Justice Barrett was a vocal opponent of abortion rights. Polls show Americans feel differently. Our most recent poll on the subject found that 62% of Americans want the Supreme Court to uphold Roe versus Wade. Just 24% favor overturning it. And a recent Pew poll found that 59% of Americans believe abortions should be legal in most or all cases. This case will come before the court in the fall. A decision expected next year, right in the middle of the midterm elections. Robin?
A lot of eyes on this. All right, Terry, thank you. Well, hey there, GMA fans.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. Two senators' bipartisan support to fight military sexual assault. Let's take a listen to that video from ABC News.
A rare moment of bipartisanship. A bill aiming to combat sexual assault in the military has garnered the support it needs to secure a vote in the Senate.
And here to discuss are the two women behind that bill, New York Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Iowa Republican Senator Joni Ernst. Welcome to you, Senator Gillibrand and Senator Ernst. We appreciate both of your time. We know you're busy women, so thank you for being with us on the show. And Senator Gillibrand, I'll begin with you. You've been at this bill, or a version of it, for the past 8 years. So what is it about this bill now that is making it go through?
Well, there's been three major changes. First of all, we have a commander-in-chief who wants to do this. President Joe Biden ran on this issue. He thought serious crimes should be taken out of the chain of command. And that's created space for generals who are currently active duty to come forward. So now we have a surge of support. Second, we have Senator Ernst. She has really looked at this issue intensely over the last 6 years. She not only is the only Republican female combat commander veteran in the Senate, but she also is a survivor. And so she understands how important this is, and her leadership has made a difference in earning the support of other people across the board. And then the third thing that's changed is a scathing report out of Fort Hood. The fact that the DOD investigated what happened at Fort Hood after a young woman was murdered, and they believe by her harasser. And so that report said that there was a toxic command climate that was in fact permissive of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And the combination of those three things really has changed the landscape so that now we have over 60 co-sponsors in the Senate for this bill and probably over 70 supporters of the bill.
And we stand there looking at you two, I assume, vaccinated folks standing close together here today, but a Democrat and a Republican. And Senator Ernst, yes, this could have all kinds of impact and change in the military in terms of making sure people are brought to justice and which cases are brought. But also, is this potentially going to change an entire culture in the military?
Well, I do think so. I think for a positive way, though. Of course, we do want to keep as much control within the chain of command. This bill does allow that. While the decision-making for a case like sexual assault will go to a specialized prosecutor, a trained prosecutor, it still does allow the notification of the commander of what is going on within that unit. It does allow the commander to make positive changes within that command.
Senator Gillibrand, and it's a beautiful thing to see the two of you side by side doing something together for the betterment of women there in the military. I'm curious, Senator Gillibrand, you've been at this for some time, as we pointed out, 8 years plus. Why is this your passion? What brought you to this legislation and wanting so badly to push it forward and to see it through to today?
Well, as someone who served on the Armed Services Committee for the last 10 years, I've traveled the globe and talked to men and women who are serving. I've talked to them at Fort Drum, our major base in New York State. And when they tell me the stories of not only being brutally assaulted, but then not only disbelieved, but then retaliated against, it breaks your heart. And it enrages me and has really made me determined to value their service.
One last thing here, and my colleague and I, we're so excited to see you two standing there together for a lot of reasons. We cover a lot of politics, but we don't, just the sight of you there and to know you've worked together. We had Senator Hirono, one of your colleagues, on not long ago, talking about the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act that passed 94-1 in the Senate. Still, you talk about you two were able to do this because of friendships, right? That was necessary to put you kind of over the edge here. Are we going to see more of this? Why does it still feel like this is too few and far between that we see something like this taking place in Congress?
Well, I do have to say that there is a lot of bipartisanship that happens within the United States Senate. Of course, a lot of the disparities between our party, that's normally what is highlighted in the media. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty and what's happening on the ground here in Washington, D.C., it is these friendships that bring people together. It is the passions. Senator Gillibrand talked about her passion of protecting men and women in uniform. Certainly, I have served in uniform. I am a survivor. We share that passion. So coming together on this bill, making sure that, one, we're putting prevention in place and educating not only our current leaders on the scourge of sexual assault, but future leaders as well. But then also the prosecution portion of it, which Kirsten has worked so hard on.
Senators Joni Ernst and Kirsten Gillibrand, thank you both so much for being with us today. Come back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. And we are going to switch gears now and let's go into weather. And here's a look at your weather across the United States for this Tuesday evening. As you can see, there is some rain over here, a few rain bands around here and all along here, and some rain and a little bit of snow up there. Otherwise, the rest of the United States is nice and dry. And that is a look at your evening weather for this Tuesday evening. That does it for this Tuesday evening edition of the Riley King Newscast. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening. Good night and goodbye, everyone.